I'm the real daughter of the family, but my parents treat the fake one like she's a treasure. All because she's got a shot at getting into a prestigious college, which would totally boost their reputation. I glanced at the acceptance letters from Tsinghua and Peking University in my hand, feeling a bit lost. Prestigious college, is it really that hard? On the third day back with the Browns, Jessica took a tumble down the stairs and broke her leg. In the hospital, she cried and threw herself into our parents' arms. Dad, Mom, it was Lily. She pushed me down the stairs. That night, Mason called me into his study. Lily, why do you push Jessica from upstairs? You know she's got her early admission interview next week. I looked at Mason, almost amused. You seriously think I pushed her? Mason's not stupid. He made a name for himself on the Forbes list from scratch. I caught a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes before he coldly continued. Lily, I know there's tension between you and Jessica, but this is crucial for her college admission. I hope you can give her some leeway. Since Mason paused a bit, pride creeping onto his face. Jessica's going to a prestigious school. I quickly got it. For a family like the Browns, who are new money, they care more about their kids' education than just flaunting wealth. If one of their kids gets into a top school, that's a real brag. And Jessica, with her excellent grades and an interview slot secured, is that candidate. So between their biological daughter and Jessica, they chose Jessica without hesitation. It just made me laugh more. Prestigious school, is it really that important? Mason shot me a glance, probably thinking I was jealous. He sighed. Lily, I get it. You're upset you aren't as outstanding as Jessica. But it's not your fault. Blame it on the mix-up when you were little, growing up in that regular family, without a great education. But don't worry, I'm fair. Once Jessica goes to a top school, I'll fund your studies in the US, find you a decent-sounding college to add some flair. That seemed to drain Mason's patience. He glanced at his watch and waved me off. That's enough. I'm busy, so off you go. Back in my room, I opened my laptop to see a new email pop up. It was from Professor Ethan at Tsinghua. He asked Lily, have you made up your mind? Will you join us at Tsinghua? Almost at the same time, my phone buzzed with a message from Professor Ethan at the admissions office of Peking University. Lily, please seriously consider joining us. I blinked, thinking about Mason's proud face when he talked about prestigious schools, with a tinge of confusion in my eyes. Prestigious school, is it really that hard? The next morning, I went downstairs for breakfast. From afar, I saw my biological mom, Sarah, feeding Jessica. Jessica was whining. Mom, will going to the interview next week on crutches affect my scores? Sarah barely acknowledged me, her real daughter, as she comforted Jessica. Don't worry, dear. You're bright and beautiful, crutches won't stop you. Oh, and Mrs. Smith and her family are visiting us next week. We need to prepare. Jessica's eyes lit up instantly. Will Oscar be coming too? Yes, Oscar's currently overseas for a competition. He'll join his parents when he returns. Sarah chatted softly with Jessica, then turned to me, her expression cooling. Lily, we have important guests next week. Do make sure not to embarrass us. I could only find it amusing. It's just Oscar and his parents. I've been to their home plenty of times. What's embarrassing about it? But I wasn't in the mood to argue with Sarah, so I just nodded. After breakfast, Jessica and I headed off to school. The butler helped Jessica into the car first, leaving me for Sarah to stop. Lily, wait up. I need to talk to you. I sat back down, noticing Sarah's furrowed brow. Lily, what's your plan for the future? We originally wanted Jessica to study abroad, but since she's done so well and can get into a prestigious school, it changed things. As for you, the competition for top schools here is fierce. Do you want to go abroad? If you do, I can help you start planning. But it's too late for this year's applications, so we might aim for next year or the year after. I looked at Sarah's tentative face and shook my head without hesitating. No need. I meant it. Oscar and I planned on going to Tsinghua together, and I already have my acceptance letter. What's the point in shaking things up? But before I could explain, I saw disappointment flash in Sarah's eyes. I knew it. She smirked slightly. Looks like your ordinary upbringing left you unambitious. Since you don't want better for yourself, there's nothing more I can say. With that, she turned and walked upstairs, leaving me both amused and annoyed. Jessica and I soon arrived at school. It was my first day after transferring. This is a foreign language school, with half the students studying abroad each year. Many of the remaining ones get into elite schools. Not many sit for the local college exam. Unlike other schools focusing on academics for exams, this one emphasizes well-rounded education. Before heading to class, the homeroom teacher called me to the office and asked, "Lily, right? Since you're new here, do you have any hobbies or interests? I can help you pick out your elective courses." I thought about it. Hobbies? Does coding count? Probably not. I only picked it up because my adoptive parents wouldn't give me money, so I had to support myself. It's not a hobby, it's my meal ticket. So I answered honestly, nope. The teacher was stunned. Instruments? Dancing? Painting? Sports? There's got to be something. I shook my head. My adoptive parents realized I wasn't their biological daughter when I was little. They were stingy with food, let alone lessons. The teacher frowned even more, glancing at my file and seeing the county high school I came from. Her frown deepened. "Well, okay, I'll hold off on assigning you elective courses for now. You can head back to class." I turned to leave, but she added, "Oh, right, our school band has a performance this afternoon. Parents are invited. You're welcome to have yours come too." I didn't bother reaching out to Mason and Sarah. I figured Jessica, being the school band's concertmaster, would have already told them. And as I expected, when I got to the school's auditorium that afternoon, there they were, sitting in the front row. I debated whether to greet them, just to be polite, but they dodged my gaze. What? Are they pretending they don't know me? Just then, a few other parents approached Mason and Sarah. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, Jessica's the concertmaster again, right? She's incredible." "Yep. And I heard she even got an interview for a special entry to Peking University." "Wow, that's amazing." Mason and Sarah smiled ear to ear. That's when I understood why they pretended not to see me. Everyone knew the Browns only had one daughter. The performance began. Though Jessica's leg was still injured, she played with the cast, only appearing stronger and more beautiful. The applause was thunderous when it ended. Jessica joyfully ran into Sarah's arms. "Mom, Dad, did I do well today?" The other parents chimed in with praise before Mason even responded. "Perfect. We envy you for having such an excellent daughter." "Yeah, I wish my son was half as good." Mason and Sarah beamed, holding Jessica close, a picture-perfect family. Meanwhile, I stood awkwardly to the side. Being a kind person, I didn't want to ruin their happy moment, so I turned to leave. But then a gasp came from the parent group. "Oh my gosh! Professor Ethan from Peking University's admissions office is here." Suddenly, all the parents stopped praising Jessica and got excited. "Professor Ethan? Isn't he in charge of special admissions? Why's he here? I need to introduce myself." The parents, like cats that smelled fish, were ready to pounce. Mason's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly pulled Jessica over. "Jessica, Professor Ethan might be one of your interviewers for special admission. Let's go make an impression." Amidst their excitement, I froze. "Professor Ethan? The one who's been emailing me non-stop, trying to get me to Peking University? Why's he here?" As I was lost in thought, the auditorium doors swung open. The principal walked in with Professor Ethan. He was a middle-aged man in his 40s, a bit bald from years of academia, but still refined. The principal sang praises. "Professor Ethan, your timing is impeccable. Today is our orchestra's performance. Our band has won national awards." Clearly proud of the school. Professor Ethan, though, seemed uninterested. "Honestly, I'm here for a student at your school. We want her to join our university, but she hasn't given a definite answer. So I came here myself." Every parent in the hall feigned indifference, though their ears and the corners of their eyes were glued to Professor Ethan. Hearing this, they gasped and exchanged shocked looks. Some whispered among themselves, who could it be? To have Professor Ethan visit in person? Curiosity spread, but a sinking feeling hit me. Could Professor Ethan be looking for me? The principal looked equally shocked, about to ask more, when Mason and Sarah hurried over with Jessica. Since they'd been sitting front row just now, they hadn't heard the conversation between Professor Ethan and the principal. They were just rushing over for introductions. "Hello, Professor Ethan." Mason extended a businesslike hand. "I'm Mason from Hunghai Corporation. He was about to introduce Jessica when Ethan's eyes lit up as he heard his name. Mr. Brown? What a coincidence. I'm here to see your daughter. My heart dropped. Great. Professor Ethan really is here for me. I tried to discreetly slip away, but with everyone else seated, standing up only drew more attention. I had to be super careful, moving seat by seat to get out of there. Meanwhile, others were buzzing with excitement when they heard Professor Ethan. Oh my God! So Professor Ethan came specifically for Jessica? Wasn't Jessica supposed to have her interview for Beijing University next month? Now Professor Ethan's here in person. That's practically a done deal, isn't it? Everyone looked at Jessica and her family with eyes full of envy and jealousy. Jessica herself was stunned. She always thought she was outstanding, but never in her wildest dreams did she expect a teacher from Beijing University to seek her out personally. Mason was even more pleased, almost floating with pride. He'd put so much effort into raising Jessica for this very moment. He was thrilled inside, but kept a modest front. I didn't expect our little girl would be so valued by your institution. To be honest, your school is her top choice as well. Really? Professor Ethan became even more excited. That's fantastic. Our school loves students with such exceptional talent in computer science like your daughter. Mason's smug smile froze for a second. Computer science? Everyone else was puzzled too, because as far as everyone knew, Jessica was all about high grades and artistic talents, with seemingly no connection to computer science. Mason couldn't help but ask Professor Ethan, "Could you possibly have made a mistake?" But Professor Ethan just chuckled and said, "There's no mistake. Your daughter Lily has exceptional talent in computer science, and our school wants to recruit her for that department." The moment he said that, the room fell into a strange silence. Mason and their reactions were quite a sight, from shock to disbelief, then desperately looking at me. Meanwhile, I was almost sneaking to the door when suddenly my name was called. Everyone else was baffled too. Lily? Who's Lily? I've never heard that name before. Mom, that's the new transfer student in our class. Really plain, doesn't seem to have any special talents. But Professor Ethan actually said he came for her? What's going on? More importantly, why did Professor Ethan say she's Mr. Brown's daughter? Isn't Jessica his only daughter? I'll let you in on a secret. I actually heard a rumor earlier that the Brown family found out they took the wrong daughter home years ago. And Jessica isn't their biological daughter. What? So Lily is actually the biological daughter? This circle is pretty small, so the Brown family's issues weren't exactly a secret. They just hadn't officially announced it because Mason and them were so proud of Jessica. Once everyone figured it out, they looked at Mason and Sarah with more envy and jealousy. Mr. Brown, you sure know how to raise daughters. Not only is Jessica so outstanding, but even your long-lost biological daughter is amazing. To be exact, this biological daughter might be even better. To have the admissions office come in person is something only a genius would get. Truly like father like daughter. Upon hearing this, Jessica's face turned green with envy. As everyone praised them, Mason came back to his senses and couldn't help but grin again. Oh come on guys, our Lily is just smart just like me. This hint of pride, as if he hadn't acted like he didn't know me earlier. In the midst of everyone's shock, Professor Ethan walked over to me with a smile. Lily, we meet again. I didn't expect to run into your parents this time. They mentioned that our university is your dream school, so you won't say you'll need to think about it again, right? I glanced over at Mason and Sarah. They smiled at me warmly, something unusual. But I just smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, Professor Ethan, but I'm not really familiar with my parents. So whatever they said about me doesn't count." I said this loud enough for everyone around to hear. I watched Mason's face turn green instantly, but I couldn't be bothered with him anymore, so I left. I became quite a sensation at school. Teachers, who usually couldn't care less about me, suddenly showered me with attention, which felt quite strange. After school, I returned home to find Mason waiting in the living room. Seeing me, he asked displeased, "Lily, what was that attitude you showed at school today? Why did you say those things about being distant from your parents in front of Professor Ethan?" I raised an eyebrow, knowing full well he was here to reprimand me. I wasn't in the mood to argue and just casually said, "Is there a problem with what I said?" We might be biological father and daughter, but we only met a few days ago. You've barely spoken to me. Are we that close? My words hit Mason hard, leaving him speechless. Anger was written all over his face, and it seemed like he wanted to lash out at me, but he held back in the end. Lily, he sighed, trying to calm himself before speaking in a softer tone. I know you're upset about Jessica, but you have to understand that no matter what, we're your real parents. We love you the most in this world. I was a bit surprised, taking a glance at Mason. Since I came back to the Brown family, he'd been pretty indifferent towards me. So when did this father-daughter act start? Mason went on. Once you get into Beijing University, you'll bring honor to the Brown family. You'd be my proudest daughter. I finally understood what was going on. Mason didn't want to acknowledge Lily from a poor, struggling family, but if it was the Lily who got into Peking University, he was all for having her as his treasured daughter. I let out a sarcastic laugh, about to speak, when suddenly Sarah rushed in from the doorway with a shout. Honey, something big's happened. She handed her phone to Mason. After he saw what was on the screen, his nostrils flared, and he began yelling at me, pointing his finger in my face. Lily, how could I have a shameless child like you? I looked down at the phone in his hand. On the screen was a popular forum among parents of students preparing for exams. At the top was a post with the headline, Foreign Language School Transfer Student and Peking University Admissions Officer Caught in a Scandal. The post had photos of Professor Ethan and a female student leaving a restaurant. I recognized it as a picture from when I had dinner with Professor Ethan and a few other teachers last night. But the angle was misleading, showing only me and Professor Ethan. It even looked like his hand was on my shoulder. My face was blurred poorly, so anyone could easily tell it was me. The comments were blowing up. Frowny face. I knew there was something fishy about a no-name transfer getting in. Investigate. This needs serious looking into, or it's unfair to other students. And there were even more nasty guesses and insults. The truth is, Professor Ethan wanted me because of my stellar performance in AI and computer science contests. Any professor would snatch me up, so there was no weird backdoor deal. But Mason had no clue. He just kept screaming, pointing at me. Still denying it? How does a village girl like you know anything about computers? Fess up. Did Professor Ethan let you in through the back door because he teaches in the computer department? How did I have such a shameless daughter? I looked at Mason, my expression now completely cold. Honestly, I always knew Mason had no affection for me. I didn't blame him, even though I was his biological daughter. But after all these years of neglect, I could never replace Jessica. Mason's words still left a bitter taste in my mouth. He didn't even bother to ask for the truth, instantly assuming the worst, because I come from the countryside. What a load of self-righteous arrogance. I stood up, speaking to Mason in a frigid tone. I'll only say this once. I got that Peking University acceptance on my own. Believe it or not. With that, I turned and left, not sparing Mason another glance. As I reached the door, I saw Jessica standing there. When she caught sight of me, an evil smile spread across her face. Didn't see that coming, did you, Lily? She sneered. Having dinner with Professor Ethan last night came with a cost. Huh? I paused, looking at Jessica like she was an idiot. Jessica, were you the one who took that picture? A flicker of panic crossed her eyes. What are you talking about? You got proof. I don't have any proof, I replied calmly. But the post never mentioned when the photo was snapped. So how did you know I was dining with Professor Ethan last night? Her face went white. I chuckled. With your intelligence, you think you'll get into a top-tier university? Give me a break. I didn't bother with Jessica, this ridiculous clown, for another second. I headed upstairs. Despite not caring about the Brown family, a part of me was still bothered. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the name on the screen, and I smiled to myself. When I answered, I teased, finally back in the country. I thought you might never come back. A clear, youthful laugh came from the other side. Look out your window. I opened the window to see a heavy motorcycle parked below. The guy on it blew me a whistle and pointed at the helmet in his hand. Come on, let's go for a ride. I went downstairs and hopped on Oscar's bike. He took me on a wild ride, helping me let off some steam. It was like he knew what I was feeling. Afterward, he handed me an iced tea. Feeling better now? He asked. I looked up at him. Even without being here, nothing could escape his attention. Yeah, I am now, I admit it. When are you heading back to school? We're in the same class, but I have no idea where you sit. I'm in the third row from the back, Oscar grinned. I knew you were transferring, so I've got the seat next to mine all ready for you. The next day, I went to school as usual. When I got to the classroom, Oscar wasn't around. My classmates were whispering among themselves. That's the transfer student Lily, right? They say she got into Peking University by getting cozy with Professor Ethan. Shameless. She'll do anything for a good school. It's disgusting. It's gross just being in the same class with her. I ignored their gossip. They were too quick to believe whatever they read online, without thinking critically about whether it was true or not. You guys don't get it, do you? Why am I even bothering with you? I went straight to the seat Oscar mentioned and sat down next door. But as soon as I did, the classroom that was whispering just went dead silent. I looked up and realized everyone was staring at me, their faces shock-stricken. Do you even know what you're doing? A girl in front of me couldn't help but scream. That's Oscar's seat you're next to. I was confused. Yeah, I know. The girl looked even more shocked. Do you even know who Oscar is? He's the heir to the Smith family, and the hottest guy in school. He doesn't like anyone sitting next to him. And you dared to sit there. Again, I was puzzled, and was about to say that it was Oscar who told me to sit there. But then another girl pulled the first girl over. Don't bother trying to reason with her. Can't you see? She's just trying to snag Oscar's attention on purpose by sitting there. With those words, the hostility in the other girl's eyes around me ramped up a notch. Some even spoke bluntly. What's she thinking? Does she think everyone is like that old Ethan professor she can flirt with and succeed? Who's Oscar? He's the hottest guy in school and the Smith family heir. He wouldn't give her a second look. Exactly, she's not even fit to shine his shoes. Amidst the sharp sarcasm, our homeroom teacher's excited voice suddenly came from the entrance. Oscar, your performance in the computer competition was fantastic. You've really brought honor to the school. I looked up to see Oscar's impatient face, and our ass-kissing teacher right next to him. Oscar walked into the classroom and spotted me. His eyes instantly brightened. He started heading toward me quickly, but didn't even get halfway before the girl who had been insulting me jumped up and blocked my way. Her face was flushed, but she bravely said, Oscar, this transfer student just sat next to your seat arrogantly. I already scolded her for you, but she wouldn't budge. She then gazed admiringly at Oscar, seemingly waiting for him to praise her. Oscar frowned immediately. Really? She sat next to me? People around us looked gleeful, like they were waiting for me to get roasted. But surprisingly, the next second, Oscar walked right over, plopped my bag onto his seat, and said excitedly, Lily, what are you thinking? My seat is the best. You sit in my spot. I'll sit right beside you. With those words, the whole classroom seemed to freeze. Everyone just stared at us shocked. I remained calm. All right, I'll take your seat. Oscar quickly plopped down next to me and, like performing magic, pulled out milk and breakfast from his bag. Lily, I bought breakfast. Which one do you want? Casually, I took the breakfast from his hand and happily started eating, completely ignoring the girls around us. Jaws dropped in disbelief. Pretty fast, the story about me and Oscar spread across the entire school. My reputation took another hit, and everyone thought I was just some schemer, cozying up to that old Ethan professor to get special placement. And now Oscar. Walking down the halls, I felt the glares of girls who probably wished they could kill me with their eyes. I just sighed. Oscar truly is a notorious heartthrob, but I wasn't all that bothered by it. Soon, the time for Beijing University's early acceptance exam came. Jessica went for an interview and returned beaming. Mom, I'm sure I'm in, she said, warmly clinging to Sarah's arm. Those professors seem to really like me. That's great. Sarah couldn't help but plant a proud kiss on Jessica's cheek. You're my amazing daughter, making us so proud. Not like some people, Sarah sneered, glancing at me with disdain. Always causing trouble. Ever since that incident with Professor Ethan, my relationship with Mason and Sarah had soured even more. But I didn't care. Once college rolled around, I planned to move out. Eventually, I intended to cut ties with them altogether. The early admissions selection process was quick, and soon came the day they'd announce the results. The admissions announcements would be sent to the school, which would then notify the students and their parents. Coincidentally, the announcement day was also the day of our parent-teacher conference. Mid-conference, the dean came in. We heard him say, "The early admissions list is out." 2 students did incredibly well. They won admissions to both Tsinghua and Beijing University, without even affecting the school's regular quotas. They got it through their outstanding computer competition performance. Tsinghua and Beijing University offer our school a few guaranteed slots every year, but those are specific to certain majors. Besides those, students who perform exceptionally well in various competitions can earn direct slots without using school quotas. As everyone whispered curiously, Mason couldn't wait any longer and blurted, "What about our Jessica? Did she get into Beijing University?" For the parents hoping their kids got the regular school quota, other students' slots didn't matter. Only their own did. The teacher's face stiffened a bit before he replied diplomatically, "I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, Jessica didn't pass her interview." "Six, no way," Sarah exclaimed, her face twisting in disbelief. "Jessica told us the interviewers really liked her. How could she not pass?" The teacher cleared his throat. "Actually, Jessica didn't pass because of some other factors. I can discuss the details with you privately later." But Mason couldn't wait. He had always hoped Jessica would get into Peking University to make him proud, which is why he doted on this adopted daughter so much. And now, being told she didn't make it was unacceptable to him. He couldn't hold back anymore and demanded, "What do you mean privately? Tell me now, why can't our Jessica get into Peking University?" The teacher had no choice but to explain. "Remember those rumors about Lily and Professor Ethan from Peking University? The university was furious and investigated, only to find out Jessica was behind those posts. Jessica's actions tarnished the reputation of a faculty member, so there was no way she could get a recommendation." "What?" Sarah and Mason were stunned. Others picked up on different pieces of the information. "Wait, so Jessica was the one who posted that, and Peking University confirmed it was false? So, there's nothing going on with Lily and Professor Ethan? You haven't noticed that Professor Ethan is still the head of admissions? If there were any issues, the university would have dealt with it already. So it means Lily got into Peking University on her own merit?" While everyone was reeling from the shock, the counselor cleared his throat. Speaking up, "Actually, this time our school secured spots for the computer science programs at 2 prestigious universities. One went to Oscar and the other to Lily." "What?" Everyone gasped in astonishment. The counselor continued, "Lily has competed in several international computer competitions at her previous school and won many accolades. That's how she earned recognition from top-tier universities." This revelation left everyone completely floored, casting peculiar glances at Mason and Sarah. Many who knew the situation whispered among themselves, "Who would have thought their real daughter was the talented one? Why did Mason and Sarah treat Jessica like a gem and never acknowledge their biological daughter? Isn't it obvious? They had no clue their biological daughter was this exceptional." They used to go on about how Lily was a disgrace and unrelated to them. Ha, what a joke. They treasured another person's daughter, not realizing their own daughter was the real deal. And now they've completely missed out. Hearing this mockery, Mason and Sarah turned pale. I paid them no mind, heading to the office with the counselor to finish some paperwork. After my talk with the teacher, I stepped out to see Jessica, Mason, and Sarah. The once happy family now painted a grim picture. Jessica was sobbing, pleading with Mason, "Dad, please don't give up on me. Let me stay in school for one more year. I promise I'll get into Peking University next year." "What nonsense is this?" Mason snapped. "A student can only use the school's recommendation once. Even if you repeat, the school won't give you another quota. Let me take the exam myself then," Jessica declared frantically. "I can still get into a top school. Give me a break." Sarah interjected, her face devoid of any former affection, replaced with sheer mockery. "You only got the recommendation because of your so-called well-rounded abilities and the gilded resume we crafted for you. Without it, do you really think you can pass the exam with your scores?" Jessica turned pale but stubbornly refused to back down. If Lily can get into a prestigious school, why can't I? What do you have to compare with Lily? Mason roared. She is my biological daughter and inherits my superior intellect. And you? Just a girl with rural roots. How do you expect to be that exceptional? Jessica left, face drained of color, almost stumbling as she went. With her gone, Mason looked up and saw me, immediately breaking into a bright smile, rushing over. Lily, you're finally here. So have you decided? Tsinghua or Peking University? I replied flatly, what's it to you? Mason's smile froze. Sarah quickly chimed in, Lily. I know there have been misunderstandings between you and your parents, but in the end, we're still your parents. Can't you stop being angry, please? I sneered, sorry, I don't consider you my parents. I can't think of parents who, upon finding their long-lost daughter, their first reaction isn't joy or care, just concern about shame. Or parents who would rather trust someone unrelated to them over their biological daughter. So I choose not to acknowledge them as my parents. Sarah's face grew even darker at these words. At that moment, I saw Oscar waiting at the stairs. Without hesitation, I turned to join him. So unexpectedly, Mason suddenly spoke up, Lily, you better be sensible. I heard about you and that Smith boy. You gotta know what sort of family the Smiths are. Our Brown family is just barely a match. If you accept being my daughter, you can marry with pride. But if you leave us, you'll be just an unwanted orphan. Do you think the Smiths will accept you? Before I could respond, a deep voice spoke up behind me. Who says the Smiths won't accept her? I looked up, my eyes lighting up. It was the parent-teacher conference today, and Oscar's parents were here too. Mrs. Smith walked quickly over, wrapping her arm around my shoulder, and said to Mason, sorry, Mr. Brown, but unlike some people, we Smiths actually know a good person when we see one. To us, Lily is the best girl in the world, and our son is lucky to be with her. We don't care who her parents are, or where she comes from. Mason and Sarah were stunned. They didn't expect that I already had Oscar's parents on my side. They wanted to argue but weren't brave enough, knowing the Smiths' influence, and eventually just nodded meekly. I smiled slightly, looked up at Oscar next to me, took his hand and said, let's go to Tsinghua University together.